In Dunkirk, this is a useless weapon. What's the most useful weapon of all? Time. What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for Dunkirk. Now, the plot basically follows the real-life events of the evacuation at Dunkirk during the Second World War, where about 400,000 soldiers are laid out on the harbor of Dunkirk, north of France, where they are surrounded by German Nazi soldiers closing in on them for their annihilation. So, what is their one goal? To escape. Going into this movie, I had super high expectations. This is my most anticipated film of 2017, and it's for two words: Christopher Nolan. What can I say that hasn't been said about him already? He is one of the most renowned filmmakers working today. Certainly one of my favorites, if not my favorite, working right now. All of his movies, all 9 of his previous directorial efforts, which I've seen every single one of, I feel are all strong films. I don't think he's had a single misfire yet, going all the way back to his debut with 1998's Following, then Memento, then his remake of Insomnia, then Batman Begins, kicking off the Dark Knight trilogy and following it up with The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, The Prestige, Inception, Interstellar. I think that these are all solid movies that I've either really liked or flat out adored. The Dark Knight in particular is the movie that was my film awakening moment. I will never forget that experience of watching The Dark Knight 9 years ago in theaters opening weekend, and it just changed me as a person to take a greater interest in cinema. So with Dunkirk, this is Nolan's first stab at making a war movie, and it wasn't a typical looking war movie, as it didn't focus on a single battle or the entire scale of a war, but it focused on a pivotal rescue mission that occurred early on in World War II. What I can say about the cast and their performances is that without a doubt, everyone for the roles that they are given do outstanding jobs, even if there is not that much in the way of character development or dialogue, as that is what's hindering a lot of people's enjoyment for this movie, for those who are more divided on it. Because yeah, we don't get that much backstory for any of these characters or any big reasons to care for them if they make it out alive. But I think that either way, since the movie is mostly focused on the war itself, the actors who are put into the situations, ranging from the more unknown actors to the more famous ones, still do really superb jobs in the film. We have cast members such as Fionn Whitehead, Tom Glencarny, Jack Lowden, Harry Styles. Yeah, Harry Styles of One Direction. He proves to be a pretty good actor in this movie. Barry Keoghan, and then the more known actors such as James D'Arcy, Kenneth Branagh, Cillian Murphy. The two standouts in this film to me are Tom Hardy as the Royal Air Force pilot, who, yet again in another movie, has his face covered up by something, but he does some exemplary acting with his eyes and even his voice as you hear him talk throughout the radio transmissions to other pilots in the film. He doesn't have that big of a role, but in the sequences where we do focus on the fighter pilots in the air, he is a standout. And the other notable actor in the film is Mark Rylance as a civilian who uses his own boat to go to Dunkirk in hopes of rescuing some soldiers, and I feel that he is the heart of the movie. To me, he gave the best performance in the film, as he is very much understated, as are the rest of the actors in the movie, but he's understated in the sense that he truly believes in going out into a dangerous area in the hopes of rescuing some soldiers so that they can all go home and have a home to go back to. Everyone just simply does a great job. The writing in this film very much connects itself to the acting in this movie, as again, there's little in the way of character development or dialogue. Christopher Nolan wrote this script, and it's only about 100 or so pages to my knowledge, as that is not very much for a screenplay, yet the way the movie is even set up for itself has a reason to be like that. From the get-go, we are thrown into this rescue mission really quickly, as the movie makes it really clear that it takes place in 3 different points of view. The first point of view being on land / the beaches of Dunkirk, where we follow Fionn Whitehead's character from the very start. We also focus on Mark Rylance's civilian character with his boat at sea, and then Tom Hardy's fighter pilot character in the air trying to fend off against some Nazi pilots with his Royal Air Force comrades. With this structure, you can tell Nolan was trying to cover all different angles of what went down at Dunkirk, aka Operation Dynamo, so that we get to see how they all contribute to each other in an attempt to get over 400,000 soldiers or so out of there and back home. This is a really interesting structure to take, as well as, like Nolan's other movies where there are mainly mind benders, he tells his story out of order, and that so applies to Dunkirk as well, as we constantly switch perspectives between land, sea, and air. This fragmented setup may sound confusing, but it's actually pretty easy to get into, especially when you see how all of these timelines line up with each other throughout the movie in order to connect by the very end. And what this movie also does fantastically is create a sense of suspense with how the perspectives are constantly switched on, as there is a growing sense of impending doom that is going to be laid out on all of these characters. With that being said too, this movie is rated PG-13, and a lot of people were worried for how Nolan would be able to craft a World War II movie that is not very bloody or very violent, in contrast to Saving Private Ryan, which I feel is the greatest war movie ever made, and even something else recently like Hacksaw Ridge. These movies are both uncompromisingly violent and coincidentally also focus on characters too. Nolan, again, clearly did not necessarily want to focus on characters, but he wanted to focus on the event itself. And what he does, in increasing the tension throughout the movie, it is incredibly effective. I have not been this stressed out watching a movie in theaters in a while, as I knew something bad was coming at almost every turn. How this unnerving sense of danger is created has to do with the masterful filmmaking on many different levels that Christopher Nolan creates along with his team. Of course, Christopher Nolan directs the shit out of this movie in how he sets up scale, framing, and just where different perspectives lie. Nolan really did not mess around in how authentic he wanted this movie to look to the actual Dunkirk rescue mission that took place all those decades ago, as he actually shot where this event took place while using real planes and boats at the same time. He has been known to use little to no CGI in his movies. His previous movie, Interstellar, for example, had no green or blue screen, and with Dunkirk, I could not tell what was real or not, as it all just looked so real to me. This is just stellar production design, and whether or not Nolan really did risk his actors and stunt performers in the air, land, or sea, it looks all the better for it, especially in the way this movie is shot. Oh wow, this movie is gorgeous to look at. The cinematographer on this film is Hoyt van Hoytema, who has previously did the camera work for Her and, again, Nolan's previous movie, Interstellar. This is a beautifully composed movie, frame by frame, and the way he sets up how we see the perception of the soldiers, either in all 3 perspectives, or just how the movie looks in sweeping through different ways and movements to really get us in the nitty-gritty of this chaotic event. Nolan also made the wise decision to have, yet again, his movie shot in IMAX. Most of this movie, to my knowledge, was shot in IMAX, about 75% of it. This is the way I did see the movie, and yes, see this movie in IMAX or the biggest screen possible. The way Nolan even uses this format to its fullest advantage in filling up the entire screen to get us the whole scale and scope of what we are dealing with here it just feels so grand. The movie does obviously switch between aspect ratios at times in the movie too, but the way it is edited together is really clever, as we only get to see the massive moments on screen in IMAX. As I said before, this movie does a phenomenal job in creating tension, and half of it, like literally half of this movie, is attributing that to Hans Zimmer's excellent original score. Just from the first bars we hear and it going on throughout the rest of the movie, you are constantly on edge. The track Supermarine is an example of how Zimmer wants to instill fear in us in feeling the urgency that these characters are facing and getting out in one piece because of how time is really crucial to them. Time has always been an important theme in Nolan's films of the past, but it's really shown off with an effective level here as well. We also get to see how cleverly Zimmer used Nolan's own pocket watch ticking in the background of the score throughout. Speaking of time, once again, Dunkirk is Christopher Nolan's shortest directorial effort since his feature debut in 1998 with Following. That movie was 70 minutes long, and even in comparison to Nolan's previous film Interstellar, this movie is a whole hour shorter than Interstellar. Interstellar was about 2 hours and 49 minutes, and hell, even Saving Private Ryan is about that long too. But with Dunkirk being about an hour and 45 minutes long, I have never felt this movie run so long before, but in the best way possible, because I honestly felt like the movie ran longer, but it was not a bad thing because I was just so into it. It's honestly really difficult for me overall to pinpoint a specific issue I have with this film, because Nolan directs this movie like being a captain at the helm of his own ship in masterful execution. Yeah, the big negliging factor for many people is that there is little character development and dialogue here to flesh out these people for who they are. But for me, I knew going in that characters were not going to be of big emphasis in this movie. And the characters that we do see, they're all flawed. We don't see the best of decisions being made from humanity in this situation, as ultimately survival is the real victory here, as everyone is just trying to get out of there in one piece. So the decision for Nolan to focus on the event itself still was able to evoke a sense of humanity and emotion attributed with that. And by the end, it was so emotionally gratifying on a cinematic and humanistic level to see those who did make it out alive, as this was an event that shaped World War II for many, not just those from Britain, but other people who were involved in big or small roles. I'm a huge history geek, so I got so absorbed. Christopher Nolan has simply done it again, in my opinion. He is 10 for 10 in terms of his directorial efforts here. And I feel that Dunkirk is one of his finest films. Is it one of my absolute favorite movies that he has done? Well, that is honestly a loaded question, and it's really hard to say. My top 3 Christopher Nolan movies are Memento, The Dark Knight, and Inception, because those made me think on that level. And I guess that's one letdown I would say I had with Dunkirk, as it didn't really make me think that much, aside from piecing together the structure here. But Nolan stepped outside the box in making a war movie that made you get engaged from all different perspectives, but also just how he was able to effectively push intention and getting you into the heart of this chaotic situation. I think that Dunkirk is probably the best movie he has made in a while, though. I don't think it's his best movie since The Dark Knight. No. I'm going all the way back and saying that Dunkirk is the best film that Christopher Nolan has made since Memento in terms of ambition, scope, and execution. This is a bona fide war masterpiece, one of the best war movies of the decade. Does that mean that Dunkirk is my favorite movie of the year so far? I thought about that, and in thinking about that more and more, I'm still gonna have to say that Edgar Wright's Baby Driver is my favorite film of 2017 thus far because it went in specific directions that I did not expect it to do, on top of being perfectly directed like Dunkirk. Christopher Nolan really is one of the best directors working in Hollywood today. I cannot recommend this movie more highly enough. My final verdict for Dunkirk is 5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Dunkirk, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.